I didn't know much about you.
Is Piers Morgan ever a good person to speak to?
I became very aware of you as the world did, because, as I said earlier, you were the #1 subject searched on Google ahead of Donald Trump. Yeah. I don't think it was even possible. Yeah. Why did you get suddenly so popular stroke infamous, do you think?
I didn't put a magic spell on everybody. I managed to accumulate a large amount of affinity with the male populace across the Western world, because I'm simply saying things that many men believe, think, and feel.
But I do think a lot of the things you've said are blatant misogyny. Do you accept that?
I do not hate women in any regard. I have no negative relationship with women. No women have come forward saying I've hurt them. I have no criminal record for hurting women. There's no...
Okay, there are some accusations. There are some accusations. I'm not saying there's anything to them. I guess I don't technically know if any women have made those accusations or if they're made by, I guess, men on behalf of some women. But there are some accusations out there about some stuff. So, I mean, there's a little bit. There's a little bit. And again, I'm not saying there's anything of merit or value to them. I think most of them have been just debunked. But I think there was something on there.
So you said this about Me Too stroke rape. This is probably 40% of the reason I moved to Romania. In Eastern Europe, none of this garbage flies. You go to the police and say, he raped me back in 1988. They'll say, well, you should have done something about it back then.
Yeah, so the point I was making was obviously the height of the Me Too scandal. And also, if we look at Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, there's been a lot of high-profile cases where men have been accused of things they did not do without evidence, and their lives have been completely and utterly destroyed. Right. When I say these things, people sit and say that, oh, he hates women. I don't hate women. I think rape is disgusting. But to sit and say that women without evidence can go forward and just make up accusations against men, even though they've been repeatedly proven to destroy men's lives at will, is absolutely not.
What about a woman who was raped back in 1988 and goes to the police?
But I mean, here's the problem. If a woman... Most places have a statute of limitation because it's really fucking difficult to make a rape case 30 years, 40 years later. It's impossible. It's impossible. It really does suck. It's really unfortunate if someone commit any crime to you, and particularly the heinous crime like rape, 30 years ago. But my God, like, there are limitations to the legal system. And if you didn't deal with it in somewhat of a reasonable time, how are we supposed to trust the allegation? And it should be, I guess, investigated in the same way that any other 30-year-old case is investigated. What it should not be is a hammer smashing into an anvil of a social movement and crushing somebody in between without evidence or process. And that's what Tate's really talking about here. That if you go to Romania and you try and pull the Me Too bullshit, then they're just going to say, fuck off. What do you want us to do? Is 30 years ago. Anybody who even knew you guys were alive is dead.
A lot of young, maybe not as smart as you, young men, right? Impressionable, teenagers will read that and go, what's he saying here? Is he saying that rape doesn't exist?
No, completely. I'm not going to sit here.
What an insane proposition to say that we're not going to take a 30-year-old rape accusation and treat it as gospel, to equating that to rape doesn't exist. Oh my God.
Do you think women are the property of men?
No. The point I was making.
Why have you said they are?
Because I made a religious point. I said that.
Because they are. That's right. Get owned, bitches. Get owned. You know what? Like, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it since he's not going to. And I know why he's not going to, but some women want to be owned. They want to be owned by their man, by the man that they choose. It's a consensual ownership. It's not a slavery. It's a submission. And they like that. They're into it. They like the idea that in exchange for submission, for respect, for care, for comfort, that they will be protected, provided for, respected in return. People assume that ownership implies a negative relationship. Wrong. Forced ownership implies a negative relationship. It's the force of submission that has always been the problem. if someone willingly submits, and he's about to make the biblical point, I'm guessing, of women submit to your husbands, but that they always leave out the literal same line, husbands love your wives. It's an idea of an exchange. I will commit myself to you. You can lead our life and relationship. I am yours, not to do with as you please, but to respect and honor. And in doing so, I am yours. I'm not someone else's. I'm not up for grabs. I'm not up for auction. I'm not on the block. I am yours. And that is a relationship that many people find to be very, very healthy and fulfilling, but they focus on these words like ownership, and they imply a connotation that doesn't exist. I don't know if that's what Tate's talking about, but I'm guessing it's what it is. And it's so fucking disingenuous.
I think we're arguing over semantics.
We're not, though, because fundamentally, I don't believe a man owns a woman. You do.
Well, I don't think a man owns any sovereign individual. I don't think we live in the world of slavery. I don't own any men or any woman.
Right.
Nobody owns
When
anybody.
you use phrases like property, that's what you imply.
I understand.
And so my point again is, you're a smart guy, right?
Correct.
No.
Wait. We're not arguing semantics. Okay, I believe that a man owns one. Well, they don't own it like slavery. Wait a minute. That's arguing. You're arguing semantics, Piers. Do you not realize that you just said we're not arguing semantics, but then you just argued semantics very specifically? Fucking dumb. God, Piers Morgan is such a fucking idiot. He always has been an idiot. And just.
So you believe as part of your ownership or your property of the woman, you have authority over her.
No, I believe if you have
That's what you said.
I believe if you have responsibility over something, you have to have a degree of authority or you can't be responsible.
Yeah, but authority means, again, that you're the boss.
The point I'm making.
Not quite. Here I am. I'm fucking defending Andrew Tate. I don't even know if Andrew Tate like believes deeply in any of this stuff. I don't know. But the idea that you are responsible for something, therefore you have some degree of authority over it. Yes, that's true. In the same way that a woman who is responsible for her husband, because she has some degree of authority over him, even though, yes, she is owned or whatever. But let's not pretend that this doesn't go two ways. And there's all sorts of ways to exercise that authority that are just fine. It doesn't mean that they have an unquestioning subservience to you. That's not what submission is. That's not what property is. That's not what any of this stuff means. And it drives me fucking nuts.
If I have responsibility for her safety, then I have to have the authority to tell her not to do unsafe.
Yeah, but authority means that you have some form of control over this woman.
No.
I think you're.
No, it just means that your speech to them has a higher influence than someone else's speech to them. Your boss doesn't have control over you. Your boss can make suggestions. They have authority over you. And if you do not listen to those suggestions, there is some form of consequence. The authority that husbands and wives have over each other are a series of consequences that go from the range of being angry and having to deal with someone who's pissed off at you, all the way to fucking divorce. That is the authority that you have. You can punish them for their actions in any number of ways, in any range of punishments. That means you have authority. If your next door neighbor says to you, hey, don't go out at night alone, who cares what they say? But your husband says, hey, don't go out tonight alone. And you go, yeah, well, fuck you. And you go out. Guess what? Even if there's no like greater consequence, but you come home and he's pissy, you didn't listen to him. Oh, now that's negatively impacted you. You suddenly have authority. That's authority. That's literally it. And it goes from that all the way to much more severe consequences. But authority does not mean absolute control. And these people are so fucking dumb. I can't take it. Oh, by the way, women have a massive authority chip over their husbands. Do you know what it is? It's the V, baby. It's the fucking V. Women are the gatekeepers of sex. Drex has said it a million times. It's true more often than it's untrue, by a large fucking margin. Tell you what, you want a sign of authority over the husband. It's pretty simple. If they make a suggestion and you don't follow it sufficiently enough to piss them off, you're not getting ass, man. It is not going to happen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Sex is a massive, massive poker chip in the female repertoire. And this isn't like a mystery or surprise. It's so common that it's a fucking meme on every romantic comedy, sitcom, everything ever written takes into consideration the amount of authority women have over both their husbands and literally any other man that they want with the V card. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And to pretend otherwise is just silly. Does it mean that she has absolute control over him? No, he can say no. But he'll suffer the consequences. And that consequence might be a stonewalling from sexual activity.
You have responsibility for that.
No, I have legal authority over my children. That is very different to having legal authority over my wife or my...
Now you're talking about degrees of authority, not kind. You have a degree of authority over your children that is greater than over your wife. But guess what, Piers? If your children don't do what you say, what, did you not have authority because you couldn't exercise control? Of course you still had authority.
You have children and you're responsible for their safety. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have authority to say, don't go out at night, perhaps because you want them to be safe.
I have legal authority.
You have a legal authority.
Yeah.
Legal authority. I'm saying that if I had a woman and the question...
You don't. What legal authority do you have over your child, Piers? This is actually an incorrect assertion because Tate brilliantly walked him into a fucking trap, I guess. But what legal recourse do you have for your child disobeying you to say, don't go out at night? No, you can't sue the kid. Well, you throw him in jail. Oh, I told you not to go out at night. You don't have legal authority over them. I mean, you can go retrieve them. I mean, I guess you could go retrieve them, but that's less that you have legal authority over them and more the fact that they don't have legal autonomy over themselves. There's a very big difference here.
I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to point out that's not what authority means.
If someone gives, a person can give
voluntary authority is not authority.
No, but that's the point.
It's not.
Wait, no, what? What are you talking about? Almost all authority is derived voluntarily. Almost all of it in the world. Your relationships are established by contract. Your choice to live under a government or to remain under a government is technically voluntary. You could, in theory, choose just about any other government. Now, there are authoritarian regimes who might prevent you from leaving, but by and large, the overwhelming majority of the earth at this point is free to go anywhere else once they follow and submit to the legal authority that they're going to. But that is a voluntary transaction. That's voluntary.
But do you understand the difference between having authority over somebody and somebody giving you permission to have authority?
Completely. I never said
one is consensual and one isn't.
But why are we pretending I do unconsensual things?
Because you literally say, I must have a degree of authority. I have to have some authority. And the point
only if I'm responsible for her safety. If I'm not responsible for her safety, I don't have authority.
If your position now is that
Piers goes on to immediately admit that there's voluntary authority right after he says he doesn't. Right after he says that you don't have voluntary authority, it's not a real thing, except, well, what about voluntary? It's like, Jesus Christ. Holding two positions in your hand at the same time and both of them being retarded is Piers Morgan's specialty.
With her permission, I would like to have authority when we go out at night to protect her. That's a different
That was
thing.
always my position.
But that's not what you said.
Yes,
that was
it
always my
is.
position,
So again, I simply say to you,
It is what I said, though.
Do you wish you'd phrased it a different?
When he says he must have authority, it's not that he needs to be granted the authority. It's the logical byproduct of having responsibility is having authority. Well, if I have this, then I must also have this. It's a simple logic question, but Piers won't get around it because Piers is stuck on the semantic argument of 2022 PC speech. I mean, that's what he's got.
Do you respect women?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I?
Do you think that 18, 19-year-old women are more attractive than 25-year-old women?
I think there's attractive people. That's a loaded question. I don't know.
Well, it's not really, is it?
I can't.
You know why I'm asking it?
Of course I do, but I can't sit here and
for
say.
For the benefit of viewers who don't know why I'm asking, you said this. In general, the reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick. A 19-year-old is more attractive than a 26-year-old woman because that 26-year-old has talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been effed and dumped more times, more arguments, more mess, more for me to clean up. That is misogyny.
Why?
Because that is not misogyny. That is just a very unfortunate reality of the culture that we live in right now, that people have been building since the 60s. That's just the answer. And that some men value that differently than other men is not misogyny. It's just a fucking fact. On average, the likelihood that a 25-year-old has been through more baggage-inducing relationships than an 18 or 19-year-old is true. Let me disagree with Andrew Tate. I do not find 18 and 19-year-olds more sociably attractive, because that's what he's talking about. He's not even talking about physical looks here. He's talking about the attractive nature of a relationship, of a social encounter, not just purely physical or sexual. I do not find an 18 or 19-year-old more attractive than a 25-year-old by default or anything else. In fact, 18 and 19-year-olds are some of the hardest people on earth for me to talk to, men or women, because I don't fucking understand the stage of life that they're in anymore. I'm long past understanding what that is. And I have been for a really long time. I'm more likely to gel with a 25-year-old who is perhaps married for 1 to 3 years at this point, something like that. Maybe has a kid. Maybe he's had a job, has graduated college. Like, that's actually, for me, it's kind of the opposite of what Andrew Tate is saying. But it's not because I'm measuring the amount of penis that has gone through them. It's because the different life experiences that are interesting to me are prevalent. And I find 18 and 19-year-olds to be really, really difficult to relate to. And it's not super easy for me to relate to a 25-year-old either, but it's easier because they've been through more life than the 18 and 19-year-old. If I was a single guy with Ferraris and Lamborghinis in my McMansion, being a playboy like Andrew Tate, I might actually be able to relate to the 18 and 19-year-old more than the 25-year-old. Because the attachments that I have are different than what he has. We might have different tastes, and that's okay. That's a fine thing. But the reason you make the provocative statement is to have those conversations around the edges. That's what makes online conversation and communication interesting and worthwhile, is what's going on in the outside.
But I'm definitely not a danger to women in any regard. I date women 25, 26, 27 years old all the time. None of them are offended by the things
I don't think you're a danger to women. I think the danger, if it concerns you, the danger is the influence you have on young men to have this kind of mindset. It's not a danger. And that's really where I'm trying to get to, what you really believe and how much you've just...
What you really need to consider is why young men are willing to accept the words of a random former kickboxing retard. This is the fucking point here. What we really need to figure out is why young men, young boys, whatever they are so apt to immediately latch onto this. What is going on in the world that the Andrew Tate ultra misogynistic worldview or whatever is so fucking appealing to them? What is it? Because that's the problem. That's the actual issue. It's that the margins are so pushed to the extremes right now, and we're trying to force everyone to this extreme over here and then wondering why this extreme on the other side looks palatable to people. If you try and massively control thought and experience, if you try massively to control everybody and funnel them into one particular ideology or one particular perspective about something, and remembering that that perspective is that you as a boy or a male are inherently dangerous, inherently less valuable, and inherently disgusting and unworthy. That is the Western societal approach to young men. And we wonder why in God's name they would listen to someone who says, yeah, actually, you're not a piece of garbage just by having a dick. Why is it hard for, especially when we're talking about 14, 15-year-old boys, kids who are struggling with identity, who are told that by the nature of their gender, that they are less valuable, which is kind of funny. Like it's ironic, I think, coming from the feminist side of the aisle here, that these boys are told that by nature of being male, that they are less valuable than someone else, that they don't, especially if you're white, I guess, that you don't deserve a job before a person of color, and preferably a BIPOC woman or whatever, right? Like that's who deserves your job. And you just have to wait because the other white males who came before you, they had it good. So you can't. I'm sorry that you don't get to have it good because somebody else did. You try and figure out the fucking mystery of why at that point these kids would latch on to a message like Tate. And for the record, Tate's message isn't really even that radical. It's just that we've so radicalized the normal position that something close to the middle looks insane.
If you hadn't said stuff like this, you'd probably still be on all these platforms. You'd be massively more popular, massively more.
Would you be massively more popular? This is a misnomer. Without the offensive stuff, would Andrew Tate be massively more popular? I don't think so. Actually, I don't think so at all. And this is a thing that always happens. Well, if you had just moderated your speech, then you'd be more popular. No, actually, not at all. Like that's not how this works. Aviva asked me today, he's like, why did you say what you said to get your final strike? Well, one, I wasn't thinking about it. Could I have moderated my speech? Probably. But here's the reality. If I had checked myself and self-censored, I'd be a little bit less me, wouldn't I? It would have been a little bit inauthentic. If I had caught myself and carefully couched my words and blah, blah, blah in a way that's a-characteristic, it would be a-characteristic. Then I'd be someone else. I'd be something less than what I am. And if Andrew Tate, I mean, for whatever he is, if he had just left out all of these uncomfortable things, he'd be something less than what Andrew Tate is. And I don't think he would be more popular. And if you're supposed to compromise your speech for the platforms, it's the platforms that are the problem then, not the speech.
Then you need to understand why my content existed in the first place. My content existed because I tried my very hardest to be an absolute and utter realist, especially with uncomfortable truths. I was pointing out that very uncomfortable.
Is that a truth?
It's an uncomfortable truth in many parts of the world. It's not a truth that I'm happy about. It's not a truth I created.
Hang on. You're doing it again. You're talking about what you believe is the difference between 18 and 90-year-olds and 26-year-olds.
I was talking about
your belief.
I was talking about what the people on the panel believe the difference is.
So what do you think the difference is?
I think the difference is age.
What's the difference then?
Well, then a 26-year-old's older than a 19-year-old.
And so you stand by what you said about talking to the guys, being to the club more times, being effed and done more times. Well, you believe that or not?
No, there's plenty of 26-year-old women who have been with one man or virgins,
right.
Of course.
So you don't believe that?
I don't think that the age is the only thing that's going to decipher how many men or women.
Right, so if you don't actually believe
Jesus Christ. Okay, we make selection. Selection happens very, very fast. Within seconds. Selection happens within seconds and then takes years sometimes to undo. And we select on a set of factors. Physical attractiveness. I'm very, very sorry. I'm sure there's a nice super fun and awesome bunch of frumpy, ugly people out there. I guarantee you there are. I know some of them, and it's fantastic. But on the list of things that people value, especially right away on selection criteria, attractiveness is really high. It's really, really fucking unfair, I guess. It's really unfair. But if you're a sexy guy or a smoking hot chick, guess what? More people are coming up to you in the bar than Lizzo or whatever. Actually, that's not true. That's not true. But only because Lizzo is Lizzo. Lizzo has a bunch of other factors that for some reason people value. She gets past that initial selection criteria through having millions of dollars, being super boisterous, being really fucking outgoing or whatever, and irritating, in my opinion, but some people might find that to be funny, and being famous. That, you just trumped the whole attractiveness thing really quickly for a lot of people. Not for me, but for a lot of people. But if Lizzo wasn't Lizzo, if it was just someone who looked like Lizzo walking around, they're going to immediately be discarded over someone else who's more attractive. The same goes in a lot of ways with age. And like I said, if someone is attracted to that 18 to 19-year-old look, 25-year-old woman who's a little bit more mature, might have a little bit broader hips, especially if she's had a kid, maybe 2 kids by the time she's 25. Fuck, 3 kids by 25 is not unreasonable. They look different. And if you're selecting based on a young appearance at the outset, and you're making inferences about what that means at the outset, you're just filtering, just like on Tinder when you swipe left. You go, you swipe, newsflash, on Tinder, you've probably swiped left on someone you'd really have a great relationship with. It's probably happened. But you're selecting based on an initial set of criteria. That criteria doesn't explain the person, but it does add a quick hit of value. And that's what these conversations just can't get nuanced enough, I'm guessing.
I believe that 25-year-old women perhaps have had, because they've been alive longer, maybe have had more partners, but I don't believe that makes them a bad person.
Right. You understand that the way you phrased it makes every 25-year-old woman
I understand.
No, it does not.
God,
it's not every. It's in general. The propensity, the likelihood. And my God, it is so much fucking more likely that a 25-year-old has had multiple partners has had more partners than an 18-year-old just by the nature of the passage of time. This isn't even controversial. This isn't strange or weird. If it were the opposite, if we're to say, well, it's much more likely that an 18-year-old has had more partners than a 25-year-old, it's logically inconsistent and irreconcilable. It's fucking stupid to suggest anything different. I don't know, guys. I can't finish this interview. It's just fucking retarded. It's dumb. Piers Morgan is dumb. He's intentionally dumb. He's always been fucking dumb. So I think I'm done watching that.
So pour out an art bag about more of the Freud. Spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea post on Twitter as we hear Lost Planning tonight. From the wide shores of Nan to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the thought better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law